Welcome to Dive Beyond Sport. My name is Yona, Night Wisdom.
And I'm Freddie Woodward. In each episode, we speak to athletes to discover their identity, value, and excellence. Dive. This isn't about medals, results, or records. It's about the people behind the performance. Today's guest is a former British javelin thrower who competed at the Atlanta 96 Olympics, reached multiple Commonwealth Games finals, and has since dedicated her career to athlete support and inclusion across UK athletics, later co-founding the Athletics Pride Network. Today, she's also a director in esports and accessibility. Shelley Dowling-Holroyd, welcome.
Hi, guys. Those big smiles. See, always happy to see you. Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm very excited for our conversation today. First of all, for those who are new to you and new to your story, how would you sum up, if you can, your journey to this point?
Chaotic. If I was to give one word, it'd be chaotic. But I've been privileged in that sense that it was chaotic, because I think it's probably one of the most colourful things I've ever done. And it's a journey that I'm never ever gonna forget, and one that I do tell to young athletes when they're coming through the rankings, and because I think it's important. It's lived experience, which is the main process for an athlete's education. So it's very important.
I feel like an athlete journey. Sorry, Freddie. I feel like an athlete journey is generally chaotic, and it's generally a bit all over the place. And that's what sport kind of does to you. It's highs and lows, particularly if you're one of those most successful ones. If you have success, it's never a linear process. There's always bits of chaos, and the ones that are best are those that can manage the chaos better than others, right?
Yeah, resilience. One of the biggest things. I mean, I had a major car accident in March '95. I got hit head on by a drunk driver, doing 80 miles an hour on a blind bend. And I was literally going to one of my friend's funerals who had died on the same road the week before in a car accident. And I literally just drove up the road from his parents' house and I got hit. Ended up on a spinal board at the hospital and was told I'd never throw again. You can never say that. You don't say things like that to an athlete, because you guys must know that, someone says, oh, you've got to be able to see this again. Whatever. I went home and literally it took me quite a few months to get back. But I started training again because the following year was the Olympic year. And I foolishly, I shouldn't do say foolishly, but I was on Sky Sports in 92 when it was the English girls athletics, and I just won. And it was the longest throw in history of the English girls, which it still is to this day, even though the javelin switched a little bit, but it's still the longest throw in history. And I said, I'm going to make Atlanta. So I'd made that promise to myself that I was going to get there. No matter what it took, I was going to get on that plane and I was going to be in Atlanta. So when they said, you're never going to throw again, it was, no, I am going to throw and I'm going to prove everyone wrong, which I did. I started throwing. But then I broke my elbow in 3 places in December of 95 in a training accident. So I carried on training, as you do, which is probably not a wise thing to do. Hindsight is such a wonderful thing. But I carried on training, drove myself to the hospital as well. They tried to put me in a cast. I kept unraveling it when they were trying to put it on, because you don't immobilise a joint. So I took it off. They put me in a collar and cuff, took that off when I got out of the hospital, got home, tin of beans, worked it. I was back throwing within a month. 5 months later, I was on the Olympic team. So this is a story that I usually tell to young athletes, that, resilience is one of the biggest bonuses that you could ever find when you're an athlete. If you don't give up.
That's resilience, but that also speaks to me, self-confidence and just tunnel vision. Yeah. Focus on the goal.
100%. I went to, in my high school, you get to age 13 and they ask you what you want to be when you grow up, the usual question. And I said, an Olympic athlete. And I went back in school. Once I got all my kit, I went back in school in the kit. Apart from the fact the careers advisor laughed at me, which just fueled my fire even more. So I went back in and went, hello. And had all my Olympic shit on. So teachers were crying. It was amazing. But that for me was, it's almost like someone just pushing you away from something that you've dreamed of. And I'd only just started throwing the javelin age 12, so I'd only been throwing for a year, and I knew that I was good at throwing. It was something that I didn't want to give up. I started off as a sprinter, but I hated sprinting, to be fair. Mum wanted me to be a swimmer. Hated swimming. Only because the swim teacher kind of, you get those hoops, and, if you're struggling, you can grab onto it. Yeah, well, she pushed my head under the water. So that was it. I was done. I'm like, oh, no, I'm not doing that. My mum was a swimmer. My dad played football. So I come from a sporty background. But it was, I wasn't going to let anybody tell me what I could and couldn't do. So I was just like, no, you tell me I can't do something, I'll prove it. I'm going to go and do it. Resilience.
That seems to be something, that is consistent to some of the best athletes. I think that mindset is definitely something that
you need it. You need that mindset. You can't have a fluffy mindset. And I use the term, the acronym FAIL, so first attempt in learning. And I don't use strengths and weaknesses. I use strengths and challenges, because I think terminology when you're younger matters. So if you start using negative terms, it just embeds itself into that kid's head. And then, they say, oh, well, I've got a weakness. And it does make a huge difference. So I'd rather, for me personally, using my own lived experience of what I was brought up with and what my coaches instilled in me, I want to use that and pass it on. So it's pay it forward, which is one of Frank Dick's quotes. So I'm guessing you guys don't move Frank Dick.
Pay it forward.
Pay it forward. And I use that in everyday life there.
Yeah.
I think it's important.
It's an excellent quote. And this, in a slightly different way, is something that I very much lived by as well. Like, if you help people, at some point you'll benefit from that. If you do good things, at some point you'll benefit from that in the future. And it's an approach that I tried to carry through my sport. I just tried to be the best athlete that I could. I tried to make sure I worked hard every day, and eventually I would reap the benefits. And my kind of quote was, "You reap what you sow." I put the work in, and at some point later down the line, hopefully just at the right time, it would benefit me, and I'd get what I wanted from it. And it's interesting you speak about that now, or you speak about it in a way where you're still so extremely passionate about the resilience and the paying it forward and all those kind of things. And these are traits that you developed in your athlete career, which was, with all due respect, some time ago now. How does that identity? I've got a question. How does that identity still contribute to you as a person now? Like, is it exactly the same? Do you live in exactly the same way as you were as an athlete, or has it kind of changed over time, or how has it changed for you?
So now I have to be more careful. Let's just say, you guys must know when you do get older, by the way, and you will get older, you will start to feel the effects of what sport has done to your body. You guys are pretty young now, but now, I'm 52 and I'm feeling it a lot in my body. So when I ever talk to athletes, I explain how they should look after the body a lot more than what they do. Because, you get one body, you don't get another one. And you can't just take limbs off and put limbs on unless you're a Paralympian, which I have worked with before. But, it's, for me now, the mindset's still the same, but I look after myself a lot more now. When I got injured, I think I spoke to you about this, you get imposter syndrome, but I actually got injured at the Cromwells in 2006 and I bent my tibia just by going over on my ankle, which meant I couldn't do anything. I could barely walk. I still competed, came 10th with a bent tibia. It's not too bad. I came 5th in 98 with a broken elbow. So I was, but I wouldn't advise that the kids, I know, hell, but I wouldn't advise anyone to do that now. It's just in hindsight now when I look back, it's like, oh my God, what on earth was I doing? But it was that mindset that, I got there. I wasn't going to go there, get injured and just sit there on the sidelines and just watch everybody else do what they wanted to do. I was still going to compete regardless. And that's a mindset that's often very rare to have. When I had to retire through injury, I lost my identity. I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't understand why I couldn't do things anymore. I could barely walk. I lived in Canada as well at the time, so I had to come back home to the UK to have an operation, which literally left me devastated because it took them 3 years to get this operation. And so I was in a lot of pain for a long time. And then when I had the operation, they hit a nerve, which left me with chronic pain in both legs ever since. It's never gone away. So I've lived with pain since 2009. So it's, the resilience of the mindset that I had back when I was an athlete, I had to use that and translate it into coping with pain and change my actual coping mechanism and how to cope with things. But when you lose your identity, you lose yourself completely. So I was depressed for 2 years. I'm very open about it. And I think a lot of athletes should be open about their mindset and how they work and when they get injured and what it does to them. Because I think the younger athletes coming up, they need to learn and understand that, you are human at the end of the day. We're not these glorified athletes where, no one can touch us, nothing happens to us. And, we're all living a high life of luxury, flying around the world, competing. People don't see the true side of what sport actually does to you. And I think it's important that younger generation coming up now learn this from the offset, which is what I did when I developed the Paralympic Success Academy at British Athletics, is to create that kind of mindset for the younger athletes and use my own lived experience to explain what they need to do, but they have to learn stand on their own 2 feet. They've got to learn it themselves. But when you've been through something so traumatic, and when people say, "Oh, but you just got injured," it's like, wow, okay, yeah, just got injured, but it ended everything that I'd ever known since I was 12. So I was 33, so it's 21 years of doing a sport that just suddenly dropped off the edge of a cliff, and I literally was lost, absolutely lost, didn't know what to do, and it literally took me 2 years to come back.
So what do you think is the key for younger athletes? Obviously, injury is something you can't predict, right? You never know. It's something that's inevitable, but you don't know exactly when it's going to come and how serious it's going to be. So what is your message to younger athletes now in terms of to develop their mindset so that maybe they're not, is it to not be so attached to sport, or is it to do other things? Like what's your advice to them?
I learned from a very young age how to compartmentalize. And I don't think that's taught in sport. So when a young athlete is going through mental health, they're not very vocal about it. And I think when we compartmentalize something, we put it in a box, put it into bed, and we forget about it. But then you have triggers, and something triggers that box to suddenly pop up, and it's like a jack in the box, and it hits your head on again. I think with the younger generation now, there needs to be more mental health preparation for them, and it's lacking massively. Mm-hmm. There needs to be something in place that athletes feel comfortable in talking. When you've got lottery funding, back in the day, and you got injured, the following year you were off. If you were still injured, you were off funding.
Yeah.
Now that for me is wrong, because what happens to the athlete? You suddenly don't. Yeah. You suddenly have no funding coming through, and you're on your own. And it does create it does create PTSD. It's a trigger, because when you get back on that funding, you're like, oh, is it going to happen to me again? And it creates a spiral. It's a downward spiral in your head that you're then sat there thinking, oh my God, what if I get injured again? And then you put too much pressure on yourself. And then you start being too, I wouldn't say sensible. I suppose they should be sensible in a sense, but you got over cautious. And then you start not doing things in fear that you're going to get injured again. So then you're stuck in a revolving door. And what we need to do is create an automatic door that opens. So when a kid or anyone with mental health has an issue where they can openly go and speak to someone and not be in fear of being taken off the program, or not be in fear of it getting out, which I know things have got out in the past. And then you get looked at, and then you start feeling paranoid. I've seen all this before, even when I was competing. Mental health wasn't a big thing, and it should have been, because without that mental health preparation, I did everything myself. I researched it myself, and I got myself out of it, because I'm resilient and I didn't want to give up on myself. But a lot of people that I know, and one of my friends unfortunately took her own life. She was an Olympian, took her own life because she just didn't get the help that she needed. It wasn't there for her. So in order to try and stop this and to stop it from happening again, I think we have to create that kind of mindset that it is okay to talk. It is okay to be vulnerable, because being vulnerable is a strength. It's not a challenge or what some people would call a weakness. It is an absolute superpower to be vulnerable, because as soon as you feel that weight lift off your shoulders straight away. So younger athletes today need to be prepared to feel that loss of, not winning. They don't understand when they don't win, it's like their whole world has fallen apart. But they need to understand, when you lose a race or you lose a competition, it's not the end of the world. There is the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. I've had people, oh God, it seems so really big-headed, but it really isn't. It truly happened. I'd turn up to a competition, they'd find that I was there, they'd pack their stuff and they'd walk off the track because they weren't going to beat me. And,
Wow.
that for me was like soul destroying for me as a person, to think that I've created that kind of monster in that person's head. Instead of them, wanting to try and beat me, they just took it upon themselves. So, well, I'm not going to be able to beat Shelley, so I'm just going to leave. So
I mean, it wouldn't be beneficial for them to even try, because if they didn't beat you, if they got beaten, it would just reflect badly on them, and then that would negatively affect their career or something like that.
Yeah. So there needs to be a lot more mechanisms in place to actually help the younger generation. And every sport is different, but I think there needs to be a uniform place where athletes can go, where they feel safe enough to talk, even if they want to do it anonymously. There needs to be a mechanism in place for every single sport where they can go. And it's not just athletics does this, swimming does that, diving does this, cycling does that. There needs to be something in place. The feeling safe is like one of the biggest things for me. Safeguarding is massive, especially when I was working on the Paralympic program. Safeguarding was the utmost importance to me, and it still is now when I'm talking about gaming.
You mentioned the national lottery funding, which obviously has changed sport massively in many ways, from the time before it was introduced to now. At what stage of your career was the funding introduced? Because there must have been a crossover, right, from before to after. Did you benefit from it, and how did it affect you personally?
Then it was really different. I think I was one of the first batch of athletes to actually get it. Mm-hmm. So, but you weren't allowed to work, and if you did, you had to work part-time. So there was a lot of rules behind it, and a lot of, for me, I don't remember ever being told about the rules, regulations, what you could, what you couldn't do, what sponsors you could have. I don't remember any of it, if I'm honest. I really don't. We are talking a long time ago now. Do you know this? Remember, I'm old school, but it has changed quite a fair bit now. And with the Paralympic program, it is now parallel. So there's the funding on the Olympic side is exactly the same as the Paralympic side. Back then, I'll give you an example of how segregated those two areas are. So we were in Atlanta, and when we were leaving, they started to dismantle the actual stadium. Paralympics haven't even been. So can you imagine being a Paralympian, going to your first Paralympic Games and finding that the stadium was being dismantled? Their kit, we're all proud of our kit. I still have my aquascutum kit that I got, not that I'd ever wear a dress ever again. It's never going to happen. But it was, it's a lovely, lovely outfit, but it's all my Olympic kit is still in the actual Olympic suitcase. I've got a few bits and pieces up in the house, but they were given badges to sew over our Olympic logo. So can you imagine? They're not even given their own kit, and it's things that it's heartbreaking when you see things like that. But the lottery was, for me, it was great, because you were given money to train and it helped. I was given vouchers. This was before physios and everybody else came on board. So I was given vouchers to go and get physio or acupuncture, which I use quite a fair bit. Now with UK, have got their own physios. They've got the dietitians, everything, nutritionists, you name it. They take blood tests to make sure, to see what you're lacking in your nutrition, and they help you with that. It was very, very different back then. It had none of that at all. So now that part of it is fantastic. But I do think like the money side of it, if you have a young Paralympian, for instance, like the Paralympians are quite young, getting on A funding, for instance, that's a hell of a lot of money for a young kid to be given. So there are provisions in place, but it never used to be like that. So lottery funding's different. I'm old school lottery funding. So I think I was part of the learning curve for them. No, but I got took off.
You mentioned, as he said earlier, it's true. It's often the time when you need it the most, but it's so ruthless, isn't it? But I wanted to ask actually about the Paralympic side of things, and when did that become important to you? When did you feel like you wanted to contribute to that and really help those athletes?
So when I moved back over here and I had several operations on the leg, I've been 2 years out of the sport and I wanted to do something. So coaching for me in athletics was a way back into something that I'd lost. And I thought maybe that's the way that I can get back into it. That's the way I can create a different mindset, use my own experience to help other athletes. So I did. I got back into coaching and helped a young Paralympian, Holly Arnold, back in the day. I think she was the youngest one to compete in Beijing. So I started with that, and then I ended up working for England Athletics on the disability side, and then moved to UKA on the Paralympic side. But that for me was more challenging because, when you've got Paralympians that are marginalised, they're disabled by society, and they're just as important as everybody else, and they should be given the same opportunities as everyone else. And I could see that was a big challenge for me, and one that I wanted to help them overcome just as much as me. So they helped me just as much as I helped them. And then the Invictus Games was one of the other biggest things that I also helped with as well. So I did with, it was the British Paralympic Association. I ended up going into Woodward barracks in Preston to help some soldiers, try and get some normality, because they've been, like I said, blowed up. One of the guys that I've helped, Dave, lost both his legs and one arm. And his normality had disappeared, and he couldn't do the job that he wanted to do anymore. So I wanted to get these guys involved in sport because I knew sport would help massively. So I got these guys involved. BPA got involved, and then it literally evolved Invictus Games. So it's massive. It's just one of the best things I've ever done, working with the Paralympic team and the younger generation. And getting athletes to come in. So a lot of people call me an ambulance chaser, which I found hilarious, to be fair. But I used to carry business cards around, and if I saw a disabled kid in a supermarket, I'd give them a card and just say, if you ever want to do sport, give me a ring. And it often helped. So it's that for me was not, I'd say it probably saved me more than anything. And I think I wanted to pay back as well. So I wanted to pay back what I'd taken from the sport. because you get a lot of athletes that retire and then just leave sport altogether and don't give back. You guys are giving back. You're helping the younger generation to understand what it takes to be an athlete. And when I say athlete, I mean generalization of like every single sport, not just athletics. But I think, it literally saved me doing that job more than anything. I think if I'd have been stuck in an office, I would have been like probably so unhappy. It just wouldn't have been me at all. But I was at UK for like 14 and a half years working on there, and I left because my dad was dying. And I wanted to spend time with his family before my dad passed away. And then moved into it, which is fabulous. And I love it.
I find it interesting that you said you wanted to give back what you had taken from the sport rather than what you'd gained from the sport, which is, it's only a small change of word, right? But I represented Jamaica internationally. I don't feel like I necessarily gained anything financially from Jamaica. I never got sponsored by a Jamaican company or anything like that. But I wouldn't have been able to achieve all the things that I have done in my career without Jamaica. And I feel the same way as you. Like, I want to give back to Jamaica, but I've always said it as I want to give back because I've gained so much from the island rather than what I've taken from sport. So I think my questions surround like why the word taken rather than gained, particularly with going through so many injuries and so many challenges and difficulties. I feel like surely you must feel like you've actually it's lifted you. When you say taken, it's almost like you've snatched it away from someone else. Maybe I don't know.
Which did?
Do you have any thoughts? Okay.
I did in that sense. I did when I explained earlier about that person that just walks off the athletics track and didn't want to compete against me. I took that from someone. So I wanted to give back rather than I took someone's dream.
Is that not just because you were better at that point? Like you didn't force them off the track. They made that decision. That was your status that you developed from the quality of your ability, right?
I think I took a lot from the sport. I did gain a lot, but I did think, terminology is like you say, it's very, very different. And like you say, using challenges and weaknesses. I do feel like I took a lot from the sport in a sense, my own mental health, my own peace of mind, my, everything that I gained, I feel I took from it. Okay. But that's what's in my head. I feel like I took a lot from sport. Maybe it's just because I'm old school. I don't know. Maybe it just means same. Taken, gained. It probably will just mean the same. But I am old school. And I do feel like I took a lot from sport and gained a lot from sport. I took a lot in the sense that, learning from other people. So I took information from people, utilized it, built on it, and then give it back. So in that sense, that's what I actually mean. So I took a lot from sport, from coaches, physios that I had. A couple of the physios are no longer with us. And, I took a lot from those guys on how to do prehab rather than rehab, which is what I do explain to younger athletes these days. So in that sense, I suppose you could use the term gained, but I feel like I took that from the sport and then utilized it and paid it forward.
Okay, that makes sense.
One of the things as well, just because you talked about the old school, one thing I'm curious about, and so a big difference between Yona and I is that, see, I continued down the British pathway, and Yona was representing Jamaica. Obviously, in the UK, we had the lottery funding, we had the programs, we had all that stuff in place. I never had to worry about booking flights, hotels, like paying for the events. All that stuff was taken care of. I was just like another body. If I qualified, I went, yay. And there was, from my side, there wasn't very much responsibility. Whereas from Yona's side, there was a lot of responsibility. He had to find funding and sponsors and organize a lot of things himself. And I actually think that made him more professional than a lot of the British athletes, including me. And I just wonder what's your take on that in terms of in the old school way, when I assume maybe things were sort of more up to you, were they? And do you feel like you had more responsibility and did that, even though things are much better now? I almost worry that I was a bit almost immature because of that. And actually, I might have learned more from needing to take more responsibility myself. I just wondered if that resonates with you at all, or...
Yeah, I mean, but even back then, everything was paid for. And I didn't understand the value of how much those flights cost, how much the events cost, and when I moved into coaching and working for UKA, one of the biggest things that I always said to the athletes was, when you go away for these events, they're not free. I was like, yeah, it's free. It's like, they're not free. No, UK have to pay. So you could pay like $500,000 for like a world champs. That's just to take a team, and like, because you've got all the background stuff as well, and then you've got the officials that also fly over, and so there's a lot of things that the athletes don't truly understand. And you are right, it does create this kind of bubble that you British athletes are literally sucked into. It does create a bubble. And when that bubble bursts, when they're not on the team and they've got to pay for their own flights and they've got to be able to find their own way to the airport, and all of a sudden they're lost and they don't know how to cope with it because everything's been done for them. I've always been that kind of person that does things for themselves anyway. So even from a young age, I'd do my own washing like the age of 12 because my mum already had enough things to do in her life. Yeah. So I wanted to help. I'd clean, I'd cook. I taught myself to cook, and this is where a lot of athletes, they go to these events and their meals are all prepared for them. But what happens when you have to pay for your own event and your meal's not prepared for you? And then you suddenly watching athletes, which I have done on many occasions, when we used to go to Berlin quite a fair bit, I'd sit there and I'd just watch them put things on their plate. I'd be like, oh my God. And it'd usually be like fast food because they didn't understand. Because there was nothing, there was nothing there. I'll give you an example. Atlanta, obviously McDonald's, it was just rife with junk food. And when you think, you're supposed to be athlete, and you've got a massive McDonald's, same as in London, massive McDonald's outside, and you're like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah, I was going to say Rio is like one of the free McDonald's experiencing that was amazing.
Yeah, when you see people coming out and they've got like 4 Big Macs stacked up and chicken sandwich, oh my God! And I'm like, why? Yeah. It's just fountain pot everywhere. You could just free refills, the whole thing. And I was just like, oh my Lord! When I see young athletes doing that now, and I'm like, where's the education behind this? And I know we say parents have got a lot of responsibility, and parents should be, given this information to the kids. But the parents, it's like giving the parents the keys to a Formula 1 car and say, right, go and fill that out. Yeah. They're not going to know what to put in a Formula 1 car. You're like, oh, which is it just like unleaded? Yeah. Really? And it's the same. I've used that analogy before. It's like, your body you are a Formula 1 car. The amount of, if you put crap in it, it's going to kick crap out of it. And you're not going to be able to perform. And when you explain this to kids, and they're like, oh, right, okay. And then, the mindset changes because then they start thinking more about food. Well, would this help? And then you get the questions coming. Well, what would this type of food help me, stay on the track for longer? Or would it help me not get injured? And these are some of the questions that I've been asked. And then the next time, you see them, they've got a lunchbox, and it actually looks like a proper lunchbox that's got good food in it. And it's not got packets of crisps or cans of Coke or chocolate bars in them, and the parents, their mindsets change because they see their kids' mindsets change. But when you've got parents as well that are, with the younger generation, there's a lot of expectation on the parents, and I don't think there's enough there to help the parents understand what the expectations are on their children as well. And I think there needs to be more done for the parent side. So when I ran the academies, I'd do Pilates with the parents and I'd help them learn how to relax. And it went down really well. They absolutely loved it. And, they got to watch their athletes, athletes, they got to watch their kids train and enjoy sport, but they also got to enjoy the lunch that I've put on for them and do some talks. I'd get officials in for them as well to show appreciation for the officials, because, athletics isn't just that kid getting on the track. There's a lot more to it than just that. And you guys would know that as well. Without the officials, you would have no sport. So, the whole mindset of an athlete is much, much bigger than what people realise. And I think the educational side is something that needs to be a lot better than what it is in every single sport.
It's just a bit of a sideline story that it was really amusing to me. My granddad's house got cleared out recently. My dad kind of took boxes of things back that were maybe important to him, and there was a bunch of diving stuff that he'd kept. And one of the things I found was a world-class start sort of leaflet. There was a picture of me in some of it, and we're talking probably 2003, 2004. I just joined the program. I was the first wave of TIDs, talent spotted divers in the UK. I found this leaflet, and the back page, it had on the go nutrition advice, and it was like cold pizza was
no way
recommendation.
Are you kidding me?
No. Cold pizza, ready meal pasta type things, sort of powdered milkshakes and stuff and fruit. And I'm like, some of it was okay, but then half of it was just straight up bad, like rice pudding.
Oh my God!
Things have moved on. To be fair,
I would hope so.
It's kind of crazy because now I'm working with Aquatics GB in the high performance program, and this is my first time kind of seeing behind the scenes of everything that the athletes actually have access to, all the nutrition advice, the support. We've got a fantastic nutritionist. There's a fantastic physio, very knowledgeable. Same with psychology, very knowledgeable, very supportive. There's people to go to have conversations and discussions. And, as Freddie mentioned, I had to do a lot of things myself throughout my career. I didn't get physio all the time because I couldn't afford to. I didn't get psychology support. I learned things by myself. I figured out my own nutrition generally until a point where I asked the nutritionist and got some specific help, which actually made a massive difference, which was fantastic. But I see everything that the British divers get now, all the things that they have access to. And I wonder how much further I maybe could have gotten in my career if I had basically had that knowledge earlier, rather than having to wait so long to figure it out. But with that, it makes me feel like they have come an extremely long way with what they're doing with the National Lottery funding, what they're doing with the money that's available, how they're investing it in better systems, better processes. But I guess that in however many years, almost 30 years probably since it was introduced, the National Lottery, that's a long period of time.
The age thing again, isn't it? Yeah, here we go again.
I was talking about the National Lottery that time.
No, I know I'm old. I know. Sorry,
it's been.
Is it 30 years? Is it 28 years?
It's been a long time since it was introduced, right? And it feels like, it should be where it is now. It should have been there when Freddie was getting that little leaflet, rather than getting cold pizza. Surely there was enough nutrition advising people. It just maybe shows that they weren't investing the money in the right way. Why is it taking so long for them to figure out where to invest the money in the right places to actually develop the athletes in the right way? Which is, I think, essentially the problem that you're talking about is there's not that level of support there. But from what I'm seeing, it kind of is there now, but I know that it hasn't been there for a long time. What's caused that gap? Why is it such a big gap?
I mean, you think about when lottery comes in, it was more about medals, and you had to be top three on top 8. You had to be a finalist to actually get decent funding. You know, so you see, you had that kind of, you had to bridge that gap somehow. So you have things like e-funding, which I think it was, I'm sure it was something like £2,000. But then you'd get physio and stuff like that. That was way later on than what I had. Mine was just money, and you got vouchers, and it was off you go. You know, the nutrition side was not there, and it took a very, very long time. But I think when you put money into something and you, I want to say invest, but I think it was more to try and showcase what Britain could do with the lottery. Because if you look at other countries, as like Jamaica, for instance, you guys have still got like major megastars that, you know, have still performed really well without lottery funding. So, you know, we could see lottery funding as a positive, but we could also see it as a negative, that it shouldn't have taken this long to actually produce this level of support to young athletes that are coming through, and not to give up on the older athletes that are actually still there. You know, because I think that's a major factor for me. It's, you know, when I got injured, my dad did make a big joke of it. He said, "Oh, they should shoot you and sell you for glue." I was like, "Oh, thanks, Dad." You know, because like horses and stuff, like when a horse is lame, you know, they don't tend to keep them around. I was like, "Cheers, thanks, Dad." You know, we'd always have that kind of affinity with each other. It was just such a massive joke. It was so funny. But, you know, when you've got a different entity supplying money, is public money, and then public want to see medals. They don't want to see the nutrition side. So that gets pushed to one side. They don't want to see a high performance centre. All they're bothered about is medals. The public just want to see medals. And this is why the public play the national lottery, because they want to win anyway, but they know that money is public funding. It goes to certain athletes. When you look how many athletes there are in the UK, and then you can actually actively go on Power 10. I don't know whether Aquatics TV have the same thing, but we have performance rankings, and you can actually see who is actually on lottery funding. So the public have got access to it on that side.
Wow.
But when you've got a lot of money being ploughed into the sport, the biggest thing for them is the payback to the lottery, which is the actual medals, and that's all they can see. So the background should be the responsibility of the national governing bodies who supposed to look after the athletes. But then the national lottery funding pays for those guys. So this is where it's all come through. So instead of just giving the athletes money, it's now paying for the physios, it's paying for the staff that are in the back room, it's it paid for me to work there as well on the Paralympic program. But the general public don't see that.
Yeah.
They just see the medals that come through. But with it's hard to actually explain, because back in the day, you know what I mean, when it was old school, you know, because I am old, as we keep mentioning, I am old. 28 years, I think it was, wasn't it? Keep me saying, was it 28 years? Possibly. You're never going to live that down. You are never going to. I'm going to find you. You know that, don't you? I will track you down.
It's all right. I'll be there eventually.
What do you mean eventually? Oh, here we go. Back in the day, it was literally just giving the athletes money. But from 1996, old school, up until present day, it should not have taken this long. But I do feel it's just been a slow process, because it is a learning process. So when I say the fail, first attempt at learning, I think that was my era.
Yeah.
And I think it's just building blocks. It's every 4 years is the Olympic cycle, and every 4 years is the funding cycle. So they do, every 4 years, they do change certain aspects, and they have to write a strategy in order to get that kind of funding. So they have built on it year on year on year, every Olympic cycle. And it is getting better. It's got a hell of a lot better than what it was when I was competing. But I still think there's still room to improve massively. And I think the only way to do that is to ask the athlete.
Yeah. Well, actually, that's kind of what I want to ask you now, because part of the thing for me as well is it even if there is the perfect funding program in place, the big hurdle, the next step is, well, is the athlete receptive? Are they listening? Do they take that message on? Do they use the support in the right way? Are they doing their rehab, their prehab, all these things? Are they doing that properly? Do they understand the value? Because a lot of the issue is actually accepting that. And I look back at sometimes in my career, and I think, well, actually, that wasn't super professional of me at that time. And it's actually when I went into performing, and as I got a little bit older, I felt things shift sort of into getting into my later 20s, and I wasn't competing at the high level, but I'm still doing quite big dives. I'm performing every day, and things really started to go. And it was only really at that point that I took the prehabilitative stuff very seriously. So, I mean, this isn't just about injury recovery, but this is part of it. But in terms of getting some of the right messages across to athletes, and maybe it's to do with physio or even transition or even mindset, what, in your experience of working with lots of athletes over the years in various ways and trying to give back, have you found a way for the message to get through better? Have you found a way to connect with the athlete and for them to think, okay, I think they get me now, they're listening to this?
But the only way you could get through to an athlete is to actually listen to them, because I've seen coaches talk at athletes and not to them. But you also have to have that coach buy-in, because that coach is the person that then takes the athlete back to their club to continually coach them. So coaching coaches was something that I actually helped as well. So I was coaching coaches to coach disabled participants, which sounds ridiculous in so many ways. But when I went into the Paralympic program, there wasn't actually any coaching structure to help coaches adapt. And coaches were adapting athletes to them rather than the coach adapting to the athlete. So you've got a seated thrower, for instance, who has no use of their legs. They have to sit on a platform, hold on to a pole to enable them to throw. They have to be strapped in. Now, if I just gave that to a coach and said, right, crack on, I've lost that coach straight away, and I'd be done. So we brought in things like the flying coach program. So we'd bring coaches in that would enable paying it forward again to coach coaches that would enable them to coach that disabled athlete. So we'd run workshops for them. And then the whole program changed for coaching structure, and coaching disabled athletes was included in that actual process. And it had never been included before, but that was another learning curve. That was another process to make sure that you could use those building blocks. It was almost like building Lego. Yeah, you kept adding bits and pieces, taking pieces out, putting a window in, to show what was going on, putting a roof on top to make sure the coach felt secure. Building those foundations was one of the biggest things for me. And, I built a really good database of coaches that I actually trusted for the academy process as well. A couple of them were ex-athletes, because they understood what it took to be an athlete and, what the process was. And, if an athlete, if one of the athletes had a question, that coach would then be able to answer it straight away. When you've got coaches that have never been an athlete, it's hard for those coaches to try and answer those questions. So it was almost like enabling those coaches that had never been an athlete to understand what it is like to be an athlete, so they could then help that athlete again. So it's almost like the revolving door again. So you keep going around in circles until that person stops that door and says, yep, I understand. And if you need anything else, I can get back in the door. And that was one of the processes that I used. But it was educational for the coaches, but also educational for the athletes. That athlete should never adapt to the coach. The coach should adapt to the athlete, because every athlete's different. You guys are totally different. If I was going to do diving, it'd be a bomb. Just like literally jump off and bomb straight into that pool. You could never teach me to dive. Don't like heights for a start. So I'd do rubbish at it. But,
we can try.
If I want, but you could try and coach me, and that's the biggest thing for me. Like coaching javelin, for instance, it's not as easy as people think it is. I've seen so many blokes smack themselves on the back of the head thinking that they can just absolutely bully that javelin out of their arm. It's not even possible. You cannot bully a javelin. It's the same with the athlete-coach relationship. You can't bully each other. you've got to have mutual respect. And if you don't have that mutual respect, where the athlete trusts the coach and the coach trusts that the athlete's going to listen to them, you're pretty much done. And my athlete needs to move on. So that kind of relationship is so important. But that's what I built on, my own lived experience of what I went through with my coaching experience. My first coach was a club coach called Bill. And he was so funny. I've never met anyone like this bloke ever again. He was probably in his 80s, and he was trying to make me laugh. He wore these one heel stirrup like pants, and he pulled them right up to his chest. And he put his hands on his hips and said, "Well, what do you think of that throw then?" And I was just too busy laughing, and I'd be like, "Oh my God." And he'd do this in competitions, but he would just like, he'd have me back in the room straight away, just for being that kind of person. And my coaching process, which is what I was enabling other coaches to do, was to listen to the athletes rather than just stand there and tell them what they need to do, is let them feel what they should be doing. So like, for instance, if I was coaching you, Freddie, I'd say, I wouldn't say much to be fair. Be like, "Yeah, it was a crap dive, that one." Oh, really? But I'd say to the athlete, how you feel, what do you think? And it'd completely flip it. And then they'd be coaching themselves. And the reason why I would say this to them is because I can't always turn up at your competitions. So you need to learn, just by looking at the implement, lying out of your hand and watching it, what that has done to your technique. So coaching javelin was quite easy, to be fair, because it was my event. Shot put, I was never a shot putter. And discus, I hated discus with a passion, but I could still coach it because it's still a thrown event. But by watching the implement, you enabled the athlete to understand the position their body was in. So if they knew they'd drop their left shoulder, the javelin would fly up to the left. If they blocked too far, it'd go off to the right. So they learned to understand all this. And that was how I was coaching coaches. So the coach felt more secure in what they were doing with the disabled athletes, because it is scary for them, really scary, especially when you've got the old school coaches who have coached for 50 odd years, you know what I mean? The old coaches. But when you've got the older school coaches who, are like grade 4 or master coaches who have suddenly got a disabled athlete who's got like one leg and one arm, and they're like, "Well, I don't know what to do with that. What am I supposed to do?" It's enabling those guys to have a bit more understanding and to adapt to the athlete and not the opposite way around. So that was my whole coaching process of helping on the Paralympic side.
What was, in terms of excellence, what are the common threads that for javelin, let's say, or for throwing events, what were the common threads that went through even your career and then moving on to people you've coached into the para side of things? Obviously, it's very different, and you clearly had to be very creative and different solutions to improve things. But what were the common threads of excellence that you saw from all the people who were succeeding?
Mainly was the prehab side of things. So it's, when I say prehab to people, they're like, "Oh, what's prehab?" Because all they've ever heard of is rehab. So one of the biggest things that I used to do 300 drills a day. So I don't know whether you guys, I don't know whether you guys did drills with your diving, but I broke my whole technique right down into specific stages. So the final phase, then 3 strides, the 5 strides, 7 strides, 11 strides. But then I'd break it down with hip movement, ankle movement, arm movement, how to maximize the kinetic energy that I was generating. And then, the athletes that I have known have pretty much done similar things. So when I was at, oh my God, this is insane. So Circuit Rank, old school, just working again, reel you in. But she, I went to the, oh God, anyway, it's all 1989. And it was the European Juniors in Varazdin, which was Yugoslavia before it broke. Yeah, I know, old school. This is pattern here, isn't it? But I watched one of the East German and West German. This is when it was still there. Yeah. Really, I'm just chucking myself in here, aren't I? But I watched the East German throwers, right, when I was supposed to be warming up. And I was just like 16 at the time, just turned 16. These girls were 19, and I was competing against them. They were 70-meter throwers. I wasn't. And I was just like, I was sat there, and I was supposed to be warming up. And I took so much from that particular meeting from the East Germans on how they prepared for a competition. You know, how they, like the mental side of it, how they were like, you know, you could see in their faces that they were switched on, they were so prepared. And I'd never seen anything like that before in my life. Never, not even in the UK, not even with Tessa or family. I'd never seen anything like it. And it just blew my mind how people prepared. And that for me was the start of it all. It's like, if I prepared in such a fashion, then the longevity of being a thrower, which isn't usually that long, I spent 21 years being a thrower, but I would improve the longevity of me being able to still compete. If I hadn't got injured, I probably still would be with my Zimmer frame, obviously, going down that run up and trying to throw. I really would. I probably would not have retired through injury. I definitely wouldn't have. I'd still definitely be trying now. But watching that particular moment at that time just changed my mindset completely. And that was just watching one throw. It was Silky Rank at the time. But the way she like prepared herself for competition, and you could, like I said, the mindset, the horse blinkers were on. There was nothing else. It was like she was just in a complete world of her own, and there was nobody else on that track. There was nobody else on that track. And that kind of changed my mindset to instill that into others when I started coaching. That the more you drill, the less you have to think of when you get on that track. And that was my mindset. So 300 drills, sometimes I do 400 drills a day. But it meant that I would get on that track, not have to think, and just run and throw, and not have to feel anything. And it was just amazing. And to give that to another athlete was just like the best feeling for me. But I'd seen that in other athletes as well throughout the whole time that I've been competing. But not all throwers, only a couple of throwers, but mainly hurdlers. Because I just found hurdling fascinating. So when you got people like Colin Jackson, Tony Jarrett, you know, and watching their mindset, and then you got your Sally Gunnell as well, and watching her mindset, it just created a whole new thing for me. It's almost like the metaverse now. When you go into the metaverse, that was what I could see. So that was my own little metaverse, watching other people do that particular performance profile.
Yeah, I can resonate with a lot of that, because I spent a lot of time just watching diving videos over and over and over and over again when I was growing up, and I learned so much from different divers' techniques and everything. And you know, as much as I've been digging my own grave in this one, I've been having similar moments with some younger divers that I coach, talking about old divers that I used to watch, and they have no idea who they are. So I understand the feeling slightly.
It will come.
But it's something. But it's essentially, you know, what you're talking about. Like you watch something, you learn, you take it, you give it to someone else, and that's a fantastic process. And you're transferring knowledge, you're transferring, you know, the values, the excellence that you've developed over all these years. It's absolutely phenomenal. So I think. How would you, what advice would you give? Like, you've given a lot of advice, which is why I'm struggling how to like actually ask this question. You've given so much advice, which is fantastic, but like, if you could summarize, you know, your mindset, your how to be an athlete, your approach, if you could summarize that in something really succinct that could create tremendous value for a young athlete, an old athlete, a disabled, but readily able, fully able athlete, how would you sum that up?
God, I mean, I've always told athletes to never give up and believe in the process. When things happen for a reason. When I mentioned to Dave when he, the Invictus Games guy that's only got one arm, it's like you stepped on the IED for a reason, because if you hadn't then you wouldn't be a double gold medalist at the Invictus Games. You wouldn't even be able to compete. And same with anyone that's disabled, whether it's congenital or acquired. It's like, you were born that way for a reason, or your accident happened for a reason. You're able. I don't like using the term disabled very much, because, or able-bodied or anything like that, because, we're all people at the end of the day. But I think when someone has a disability, I always say you're able to do something that somebody who is not disabled cannot physically do. So you're able to go to the Paralympics. You're able to throw a club throw, or you're able to sit in that seat. It's changing the mindset of someone who is already marginalised by society is one of the biggest things for me. So when I say like people are disabled by society, it's like, do not let them marginalise you. Build that resilience, trust the process, because you're in this for a reason. You're doing sport for a reason. Your mindset is this way for a reason. And if you want to change it, you can always change it. People say, oh, well, I can't change it now, it's too late. Wrong. You can always change something if it's not sitting comfortably, which is why I say trust the process. If you don't trust that process, then you might as well just remove everything and just start afresh. You've got to trust what's going on. You've got to trust your coach.
Very strong message. That's sort of really kind of probably gonna end our main section here, Shelley. Thank you so much. Before we do end, is there a final message you want to give? I realize as well we've not even touched on a lot of the inclusion stuff you do and some of those things you've created. So maybe we can talk a little bit about in our bonus section. But if there's just another message you'd like to leave people with before we close this main section.
Yeah, I'm not that old. Yona, not me. You're never too old. If you want to do something, just do it. Just try it. Because you just never know. So, people like esports, for instance. So, they during COVID, people switched to esports because they could talk to each other. So you've got 70-year-olds playing esports. So you're never too old. You should always try something. Maybe you two should come over and do some javelin. Can teach you how to do some javelin. Don't teach me how to dive. Seriously, it's not going to work.
No. Sure.
Positive.
I'd very much love to try. I think I was probably one of those. The only time I've really done it is in school and with not proper javelins. But kind of like what you were talking about before, I was one of those people who was very disappointed with how terrible I was. I had these visions of and it just didn't come to fruition. So I would actually love some.
It's easy.
Some help
it's
with that.
Easy. Honestly, trust me, it really is easy.
Well, we'll see. We'll see. But that is where we'll wrap up this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Shelley, I want to give you a huge thank you. Obviously, it's been amazing, I think, for both of us to get a whole new outlook towards sport and inclusion and all of these things. I think some of these topics are things that we haven't yet spoken about on this podcast. So I'm thrilled we got a chance to just scratch the surface with you today. So thank you so much for joining us on this. Big thank you from Yona and I. And if you are listening on Patreon, don't go anywhere. Shelley's sticking around for a little longer for one more dive. If you're not there yet, come join us for the extra stories. The link's in the show notes. And so we'll catch you in the next one. Thank you.
Thank you.